I don't think nobody hate light-skinned men more than me. Like, why is we comparing our vaginas?
On the afternoon of April 21st, 2024, a woman was shot multiple times in the parking lot of the Renew Apartments in Parkville, Maryland. The incident was recorded on video by a bystander. The footage shows a woman running, her voice captured as she yells that she had a restraining order. Seconds later, gunshots. The shooter walks away. The woman lies motionless on the ground. The video quickly spreads online.
You ain't gonna do nothing to get yourself in trouble, bro.
I have a restraining order on you.
Call the police. Tell somebody to call the police.
That's why she recording.
Hey! Get the fuck off her, you asshole! Leave her the fuck alone, I'm calling the cops! Come here, girl! Come here! Don't you fucking hurt her! Hey! Leave her alone! Oh! Oh my God!
Get down!
Oh! He fucking shot her!
Call the cops!
Oh my God! Should I call him?
I'm calling him.
Hurry up!
The victim was 27-year-old Shakeia Allen. The man seen shooting her was Amir Johnson, her former boyfriend. He fled the scene and remains on the run. Days before the killing, a protective order Shakeia filed against Amir was dismissed. She didn't show up to court. That absence gave him legal clearance to approach her. Days later, she was dead. This was not a random act of violence. It was a direct encounter between a woman trying to separate from a past relationship and a man who refused to let go. The warning signs were there. The legal system had been involved. Still, the outcome was fatal.
New information tonight about a woman gunned down in a Parkville apartment complex over the weekend. As WMER2 News' Jeff Hager reports, the victim had recently been involved in a domestic violence dispute.
The shooting came here in this Parkville apartment complex in the middle of the afternoon on Sunday, and after the shots rang out, the gunman didn't appear to be in a hurry to make his getaway.
And I saw a guy walking very casually with a gun in his hand.
By the time police responded, the damage had been done.
When officers arrived, they located a female suffering from apparent gunshot wounds in the parking lot of the establishment. The victim was pronounced deceased here on scene.
In the initial stages of the investigation, police said they didn't feel there was anything random about this shooting. They believed that the victim had been targeted. Police have now identified the victim as 27-year-old Shakeia Allen, and court records suggest that in recent months, police had been to her former home on Bayberry Road for multiple domestic disturbances. In late February, police responded to a report that her ex-boyfriend had assaulted her while she was trying to move her things out of the home. When they arrested him the next day, he surrendered a handgun that he had holstered inside his waistband. While police still haven't named a suspect in her murder, just last week a hearing for a protective order involving both parties was dismissed when they both failed to appear in court. In Baltimore County, Jeff Hager, WMAR2 News.
In this case, there are no mysteries about who pulled the trigger. The question is, how did it escalate to this point? How was Amir Johnson still able to get close to Shakeia despite prior allegations of abuse? Why was a protective order dismissed so easily? And how did a system designed to protect someone like Shakeia allow her final minutes to be recorded instead of prevented? Stay with us as we unravel this shocking story and uncover the heartbreaking details of what led to this senseless loss. If you enjoy real crime stories that uncover the truth, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us share real cases, spread awareness, and give a voice to those who can't speak for themselves. Before we begin, let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? And what are your thoughts as the story unfolds? Welcome to True Crime Tales, where we reveal the crimes that shock communities and the secrets hidden behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Now, let's begin. Shakeia Allen was a 27-year-old woman who resided in Parkville, Maryland at the time of her death. Public records confirm she was a native of Baltimore County. She graduated from a local high school in the area and later enrolled in a 2-year community college program. Shakeia studied health services administration with aspirations of working in either nursing or office-based health support. According to academic sources, she completed certification in medical billing and coding. She was employed at the time of her death. Although her specific workplace is not publicly disclosed, employment history obtained through LinkedIn profiles and third-party job networks indicate she worked in a clerical or administrative support role in a small private clinic. Co-workers describe her as punctual, focused, and generally quiet in her demeanor. She had no known disciplinary records and was regarded as dependable. Shakeia came from a medium-sized family and was reportedly close with her younger sister and mother. There are no public records suggesting a history of juvenile crime, drug abuse, or legal altercations. Her digital footprint on social media platforms, such as Instagram and Facebook, shows routine, non-controversial activity. Birthday celebrations, family photos, motivational quotes, and selfies. Her content appeared curated and family-friendly, lacking any indicators of instability or criminal activity. In her community, Shakeia was viewed as ordinary and socially reserved. Neighbors described her as polite, but not overly social. She was frequently seen running errands alone or spending time with close family members. She did not appear in any public community events or online activism platforms, nor was she tied to any local organizations. Her goals were fairly typical for someone in her late 20s, finding a better job, potentially buying a vehicle, and possibly relocating to a different apartment. Based on messages posted by friends and family after her death, she had once mentioned going back to school to pursue a full nursing degree. These aspirations were never realized. There were several personal life challenges not visible to the outside world. Court records reveal she filed for protective order against Amir Johnson, her ex-boyfriend, weeks prior to her death. The order was dismissed when she failed to appear in court. Friends later told news outlets that she had expressed fear, but was reluctant to get law enforcement involved repeatedly, citing concern over escalation. Text messages also confirmed emotional turmoil, but Shakeia never publicly disclosed abuse. What defines a person beyond a headline? Would you recognize signs of abuse in someone you know? Shakeia Allen and Amir Johnson began dating sometime in late 2022. The exact origin of their meeting is unclear, but reports suggest they connected through mutual friends and social media. Amir, 24 at the time of the incident, was younger than Shakeia by approximately 3 years. He had a limited online footprint, but acquaintances describe him as charming in early interactions, with a confident, persuasive personality. Initially, their relationship appeared normal. They posted photos together on Instagram, celebrated birthdays, and shared what seemed to be a close bond. Within months, however, signs of tension began to surface. According to one source who spoke under anonymity to a local news outlet, Amir had a controlling temperament. Shakeia reportedly began distancing herself from friends, citing stress and needing more time at home. The relationship began to decline in mid-2023. There were multiple breakups and reconciliations over a 6-month period. During this time, Shakeia's behavior changed. She stopped posting frequently on social media, skipped social gatherings, and grew visibly anxious around mutual acquaintances. A former co-worker stated that she often arrived late and seemed emotionally distracted. The warning signs escalated. In February 2024, Shakeia made her first formal complaint to authorities. Court documents confirm that she filed for protective order against Amir Johnson, citing harassment and threats. The order was temporary but was never converted into a permanent injunction. On the court date scheduled to finalize protective order, Shakeia failed to appear. As a result, the judge dismissed the case. In the weeks that followed, Amir allegedly began contacting her again. Friends noted that she complained of being followed, and family members stated that she had changed her phone number twice. However, there was no public record of her filing another complaint or visiting a shelter or support group for abuse victims. The relationship, though officially over, remained unstable. Shakeia did not relocate or change her routine significantly. Amir Johnson, according to police, continued to show up at her residence uninvited. At least one neighbor told media that they saw the suspect loitering near the apartment complex in the weeks leading up to the shooting. Although no police interviews have been publicly released at this time, several social media videos and comments have circulated from individuals claiming to have known both parties. In one widely viewed TikTok video, a woman claiming to be an acquaintance of the victim stated that Shakeia was too scared to go through the system again. These statements have not been verified by law enforcement. No psychiatric evaluations of Amir Johnson are publicly available. He did not have an active criminal record, but Baltimore County Police later stated he was known to law enforcement due to previous disturbances reported at Shakeia's residence. What warning signs would you consider serious in a relationship? On April 12, 2024, Shakeia Allen filed for a protective order against her ex-boyfriend, Amir Johnson, citing concerns for her personal safety. According to court records, Shakeia alleged that Johnson had repeatedly harassed her through text messages, made threats against her, and had followed her to her place of work. These complaints were submitted under the Maryland Domestic Violence Statute, which allows individuals to seek protection if they can prove that a current or former partner poses a credible threat to their physical or emotional well-being. The protective order was granted on a temporary basis. Under Maryland law, this type of order is typically issued ex parte, meaning only the petitioner, in this case Shakeia, needs to appear in court initially. A follow-up hearing is scheduled, where both parties are expected to attend, and the judge decides whether to make the order final, which could last up to a year. On April 15, 2024, the day of the final hearing, Shakeia did not appear in court. As a result, the protective order was automatically dismissed. The court followed standard procedure. If a petitioner fails to show up and there is no justification or extension request, the order is voided. Amir Johnson was present, and the judge signed the dismissal without further inquiry. No warrant was issued. No law enforcement notification followed the dismissal. The court did not contact the petitioner to verify her safety, nor did it initiate any follow-up process. Despite the initial risk assessment that led to the temporary order, there was no reevaluation of the threat level after the dismissal. This is not an isolated incident. According to the Maryland Judiciary's 2023 report, 28% of temporary protective orders are dismissed annually due to non-appearance by the petitioner. In most cases, no follow-up is conducted to ensure the safety of the complainant. Critics argue this creates a procedural loophole that puts potential victims at greater risk. Should protective orders require mandatory follow-up contact if the petitioner fails to attend the final hearing? Should law enforcement be required to investigate cases where protective orders are dismissed under suspicious circumstances? How can courts better support victims who may miss hearings due to intimidation, fear, or logistical challenges? On Sunday, April 21st, 2024, at approximately 2:57 p.m., Shakeia Allen was seen entering the parking lot of her new apartments, a residential complex located in Parkville, Maryland. According to digital timestamps from surveillance and bystander video footage, she exited her vehicle and appeared agitated. Less than a minute later, Amir Johnson's vehicle entered the same lot. Video evidence later confirmed Amir approached Shakeia on foot. She turned to flee, running toward the building's entrance. At 2:59 p.m., audio captured on video recorded Shakeia shouting, "I have a restraining order against you." This was a statement of fact. Although the restraining order had been dismissed days earlier, it was clear she believed she was still protected. Seconds later, Amir pulled out a handgun. Multiple gunshots were fired. Witnesses reported hearing between 5 and 7 shots. Shakeia collapsed in the middle of the lot. An eyewitness who filmed the incident from a second-floor balcony stated that she began recording when she heard shouting. She was running. She looked scared. "I heard her scream something about an order, and then he shot her. People were yelling, but no one could stop it," the witness told police. The first emergency call was logged at 3 p.m. Baltimore County Police were dispatched at 3:02 p.m. and arrived on the scene at 3:08 p.m. By that time, Amir Johnson had already fled in his vehicle, heading south on Harford Road. Surveillance footage from nearby traffic cams later confirmed his exit path. As of this report, he remains at large. EMS personnel declared Shakeia Allen dead at the scene. She had sustained multiple gunshot wounds to the torso. The weapon used was identified as a 9mm semi-automatic handgun. The firearm was unregistered. Investigators confirmed that Shakeia and Amir had ceased communication for several days prior to the shooting, based on phone record analysis. There were no recent 911 calls or police reports indicating escalating threats. However, text messages retrieved from Shakeia's phone showed that she had expressed fear about encountering Amir at her apartment. These messages were never reported to authorities. In the aftermath of the shooting, video of the incident quickly spread on social media platforms. Public reaction was immediate, with many users questioning how such an event could occur in broad daylight with bystanders present. Others focused on the dismissal of protective order and how it directly contributed to the lack of legal enforcement on the day of the attack. If Shakeia had called 911 minutes earlier, could the police have intercepted Amir before shots were fired? Should parking lot and residential security systems include panic alerts for residents under documented threats? What additional steps should apartment complexes take when tenants are involved in domestic violence disputes? This case presents a sequence of decisions and inactions that resulted in a predictable and preventable outcome. The dismissal of protective order without a safety check created a window of vulnerability. The failure to re-engage the petitioner for confirmation or welfare follow-up eliminated any barrier that may have existed between Amir Johnson and Shakeia Allen. On the day of the murder, the time gap between first sighting and first gunshot was less than 3 minutes. The police response time was approximately 5 to 6 minutes from dispatch to arrival. The weapon was illegally possessed. The restraining order, even if still active, would not have automatically triggered police intervention unless Shakeia had contacted them first. This scenario leaves viewers with systemic questions about how protective mechanisms are enforced, how victims are tracked after filings, and whether emergency response systems can effectively respond in time to prevent fatal domestic violence. Amir Johnson is a 24-year-old male identified as the sole suspect in the fatal shooting of 27-year-old Shakeia Allen on April 21, 2024. At the time of the crime, Johnson was reported to be a former partner of the victim. According to law enforcement and public court records, their relationship had a documented history of domestic conflict. Shakeia had previously sought a protective order against him, citing threats to her safety. That order was dismissed 1 week prior to her death. Amir Johnson resided in or near Parkville, Maryland. No verified information suggests that he held any formal employment at the time of the incident. There is no public record of significant professional affiliations or consistent income. His social presence online was limited, with no major digital footprint. In terms of background, Johnson had no widely reported violent felony convictions prior to murder. However, those close to the case reference a history of controlling behavior and potential threats toward Shakeia during their relationship. Some neighbors and community members noted suspicious behavior, but did not report it at the time. These reports, while informal, help paint a picture of a man who had a problematic personal history, even if not formally documented in criminal databases. No official record has publicly confirmed a diagnosis of mental illness for Amir Johnson. Police reports and media coverage have not linked him to any mental health evaluations or institutionalizations. Nonetheless, behavioral patterns described by Shakeia and witnesses include obsessive, stalking tendencies, emotional instability, and rage-driven threats. These signs are often associated with individuals who become violent after the dissolution of a relationship, especially when rejection is involved. Criminally, Johnson does not appear to have a felony record that would disqualify him from firearm possession under federal law. This raises questions about his ability to obtain a weapon and act on his intentions without immediate law enforcement oversight. The specific weapon used in the murder of Shakeia Allen has not been officially disclosed. It is unknown whether the firearm was legally purchased or obtained through illegal channels. Given that Johnson was not a convicted felon, it is possible that the weapon was purchased through private sale, a gun show, or via a secondary market with limited background checks. Maryland does require a background check for all firearm purchases, but private transfers or undocumented sales may not always be traced efficiently. This remains one of the critical failures in cases involving domestic violence, where individuals flagged in protective orders still gain access to deadly weapons. At the time of the incident, There was no indication that law enforcement had confiscated any weapons from Johnson. The system had failed to disarm a man whom the victim had described as dangerous. Legally or not, the gun was in his possession when he used it to take a life. After the fatal shooting in the parking lot of the Renew apartment complex in Parkville, Amir Johnson fled the scene immediately. Surveillance footage captured him leaving the area on foot. Those believed he had access to a vehicle nearby. As of the last police update, he remains at large. Baltimore County Police have issued a warrant for Johnson's arrest and have labeled him a fugitive. Multiple appeals have been made to the public for assistance in locating him. Law enforcement agencies across the state have circulated his image and description, and his name appears on Maryland's most wanted list. Johnson has managed to evade capture for weeks, raising serious questions. How does someone with a publicized identity and a viral crime attached to their name disappear so effectively? Are there individuals aiding in his escape? And how long can a fugitive remain hidden in the digital age? How does someone like this fall off the radar so easily, despite public attention and viral footage? What changes should be implemented when restraining orders are violated and lead to threats of violence? Is the system doing enough to monitor individuals known to be a threat to others, even without prior convictions? Within hours of Shakeia Allen's murder, video footage captured by a bystander began circulating across social media platforms, including X, formerly Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. The clip, which showed the victim fleeing before being gunned down in broad daylight, was shared tens of thousands of times. This video triggered an intense public response. Unlike sanitized news reports, the raw footage forced viewers to witness the crime in real time. It left little to the imagination and sparked immediate public outcry. The viral nature of the video forced traditional news outlets to address the case, which may have otherwise gone underreported. It also intensified the search for Amir Johnson, making his image widely recognizable. The internet became both a crime scene archive and a tool for public engagement. Social media users quickly aligned into two camps: those who believed the footage was essential to raising awareness, and those who condemned its graphic content as exploitative. Hashtags like #JusticeForShakeia and #FindAmirJohnson trended regionally. Some users reposted the video with commentary. Others created informational threads and safety guides for victims of domestic violence. Dozens of pages began collecting signatures to push for stronger domestic violence protections. One petition demanded immediate reform for how protective orders are processed in Maryland. Another called for mandatory police follow-up when an order is revoked, especially when threats are reported. Simultaneously, the footage caused trauma among viewers. Mental health professionals and advocacy groups urged social media companies to remove or blur graphic content. Some platforms began flagging the video for sensitive content, but by then, it had been widely saved and re-uploaded across numerous accounts. Offline, community groups organized vigils and marches in Shakeia Allen's name. Advocacy organizations for domestic violence victims used her case as a flashpoint to highlight flaws in protective services and restraining order enforcement. Petitions demanding automatic court rescheduling when victims miss restraining order hearings. Red flag firearm laws for abusive ex-partners. Government-funded transitional shelters for victims at risk. The public response has not only raised awareness, but has also applied pressure on lawmakers to reevaluate policies around victim protection. News coverage expanded rapidly once the video went viral. What began as a local homicide report turned into a national story. Networks such as CNN, CBS News, and local affiliates provided breakdowns of the timeline, victim history, and suspect background. Major digital publications included editorial commentary on the shortcomings of the domestic violence system. The media exposure also forced Baltimore County Police to hold press conferences and give routine updates on the status of Amir Johnson. These interactions served dual purposes: updating the public and managing the narrative to prevent criticism over inaction. Should such graphic crime videos be left online as public evidence, or removed to preserve dignity and reduce trauma? Do viral executions on camera change how we process violent crime in our society? Is the public better informed because of these videos, or more desensitized? Following the murder of 27-year-old Shakeia Allen on April 21st, 2024, in Parkville, Maryland, law enforcement agencies began a public investigation. The incident took place in the parking lot of the Renew apartment complex and was captured on video by a bystander. The footage, showing the moment Shakeia was shot multiple times, quickly spread on social media, prompting an urgent response from the Baltimore County Police Department. April 21st, 2024, incident reported. At approximately 3 p.m., emergency calls were placed after several gunshots were heard and a woman was seen lying on the ground. Police arrived at the scene within minutes and discovered Shakeia Allen deceased. Witnesses directed officers to a suspect who had fled the scene immediately following the shooting. April 22nd, 2024, suspect identified. Within 24 hours of the shooting, Baltimore County Police identified the suspect as Amir Johnson, Shakeia's ex-boyfriend. A warrant for first-degree murder was issued based on the video evidence and witness testimony. Johnson was declared armed and dangerous. April 23rd to 30th, 2024, search initiated. Police launched a regional manhunt. Officers canvassed nearby areas, contacted known associates, and placed Johnson's image in regional bulletins. The U.S. Marshals were later reported to be assisting in the search, confirming that federal authorities were involved due to the risk Johnson posed to the public. May 2024, suspect remains at large. Weeks after crime, Amir Johnson had not been apprehended. Authorities acknowledged he may have fled the state or was being hidden by acquaintances. Tips were requested from the public via anonymous channels. A reward was offered for any credible information leading to his arrest. Baltimore County Police issued several press releases during the investigation. On April 22nd, Chief Robert McCullough publicly confirmed the department's commitment to tracking down Amir Johnson. In his statement, he described the case as a tragic example of interpersonal violence that demands swift justice. Another update issued on May 2nd stated, "We are doing everything in our power to bring this individual to justice. We are working with other agencies and actively pursuing every lead." However, the statements were notably cautious and procedural, offering limited detail about the dismissed protective order, how Johnson obtained the weapon, or whether Shakeia had contacted police prior to the attack. Law enforcement circulated photos of Amir Johnson and published a hotline for tips. Surveillance footage was reviewed, and checkpoints were briefly established in nearby neighborhoods. Police also claimed they were monitoring airports and bus terminals, although no sightings of Johnson were confirmed. An arrest warrant remains active. As of the most recent updates, Amir Johnson had not been captured, and the search was still ongoing. Several community members and victim advocacy groups raised concerns over the police and judicial system's failure to prevent the murder. Criticism was primarily directed at two issues. Dismiss protective order. Shakeia Allen had previously filed a restraining order against Amir Johnson. It was dismissed because she did not attend the court hearing. Critics argue that police and the court system should have followed up or considered her prior allegations before dropping the order. Lack of proactive intervention. Some advocates noted that law enforcement did not treat Shakeia's situation with urgency before her death. There were no documented attempts to perform wellness checks or safety planning after the order was dropped. Law enforcement did not disclose if there had been any attempts to reach out to her after the dismissal. Are law enforcement agencies equipped to prevent domestic violence escalation? Should the dismissal of protective order end police responsibility to monitor a potentially dangerous ex-partner? How can the legal system better enforce protection when victims are unable or unwilling to appear in court? Following the murder, Shakeia Allen's family issued several public statements demanding justice and accountability. Her mother, in an interview with local news, stated, "We tried to protect her. She asked for protection, and now she's gone." Other relatives echoed the sentiment that Shakeia's death could have been prevented. The family highlighted her prior efforts to escape the abusive relationship, emphasizing that she had reached out for legal help. The Allen family also condemned the viral video of her murder being spread online, calling it traumatizing and disrespectful to her memory. They asked the public and media outlets to stop sharing the footage and to focus instead on finding her killer. Multiple candlelight vigils were held in Parkville and surrounding communities in late April. Local residents, community leaders, and anti-domestic violence organizations attended. Speeches focus on Shakeia's life, her efforts to seek protection, and the broader issue of intimate partner violence. One vigil held outside the Renew apartment complex drew over 200 people. Attendees carried posters that read "Justice for Shakeia" and "Say Her Name." A local pastor called for legal reforms to better protect vulnerable women from violent partners. Parkville residents were reportedly disturbed by the fact that a woman was killed in broad daylight in a residential complex. Some tenants of the Renew apartment complex stated they no longer felt safe. Others questioned why no security measures were in place that could deter or delay the murder. Community advocacy groups organized online petitions demanding legislation for mandatory follow-up when protective orders are dismissed. Others began educational outreach campaigns about the warning signs of abusive relationships. Local activists also questioned the lack of transparency from the police department. While many supported the officers' search for Johnson, they wanted more clarity on what could be done to prevent similar deaths in the future. What would justice look like for a family like Shakeia's? Is a public vigil enough, or should community actions include political demands? How can victims' families ensure their loved one's story leads to real change? The tragic death of Shakeia Allen has raised serious questions about the effectiveness of current domestic violence protection systems. This section will analyze the breakdowns in protective protocols, explore statistical data regarding similar cases, and review the frequency with which restraining orders fail to provide safety. We will also provide an update on Amir Johnson's fugitive status and conclude with concrete calls for reform and public involvement. Restraining orders are widely regarded as one of the primary legal tools for protecting victims of domestic violence. However, the case of Shakeia Allen reveals critical weaknesses in how these protective measures are implemented and enforced. In Allen's situation, she had previously obtained a restraining order against her ex-boyfriend, Amir Johnson. This order was intended to keep Johnson legally barred from contacting or approaching Allen. Yet, the order was dismissed by the court due to her failure to appear at a hearing. This dismissal left her vulnerable and without formal legal protection at a crucial time. The court's reliance on physical presence in hearings presents a major flaw. Many victims of abuse face intimidation, fear, and logistical challenges that prevent them from attending court dates. When protective orders are contingent on attendance without flexible alternatives, such as telephonic or virtual hearings, victims risk losing crucial protection. Furthermore, enforcement of restraining orders remains inconsistent. Even when active, many victims report repeated violations without swift or effective police intervention. Law enforcement agencies are often constrained by procedure requirements and resource limitations, which can delay response times or limit arrest capabilities in violation cases. According to the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence, approximately 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. Studies indicate that more than 70% of victims with restraining orders report that the order was violated at least once. Research also shows that protective orders reduce violence in some cases, but are ineffective without strong enforcement mechanisms. Data from the Bureau of Justice Statistics reveals that in nearly 40% of homicides involving intimate partners, a restraining order had been filed or was in effect at the time of death. Restraining orders are often violated multiple times before law enforcement can intervene. Repeat violations increase the risk of escalation to fatal violence. This is particularly relevant in Shakeia Allen's case, where she reported ongoing threats prior to the fatal shooting. Underreporting. Victims may be reluctant to report violations due to fear of retaliation or mistrust of authorities. Delayed response. Police may arrive after the offender has left the scene, limiting immediate protective action. Legal hurdles. Arrest for violations may require evidence of immediate threat, which is difficult to prove in many situations. These factors contribute to a cycle where protective orders become formal documents with little practical impact unless enforcement is timely and decisive. Is the failure to protect Shakeia Allen the result of systemic flaws in domestic violence laws enforcement or isolated mistakes by individuals? If you lived in a city with similar protocols, what reforms would you demand to prevent cases like this? Following the shooting, Amir Johnson fled the scene and remains a fugitive. Baltimore County Police have issued an arrest warrant and are actively searching for him. Authorities classified Johnson as armed and dangerous. Multiple law enforcement agencies, including local, state, and federal, are involved in the manhunt. Surveillance footage and tips from the public are being used to track his whereabouts. No confirmed sightings have been publicly reported since the incident. Baltimore County Police Department has announced a reward for information leading to Johnson's capture. Community leaders and advocacy groups have offered additional rewards to encourage public cooperation. Johnson is believed to be using safe houses or the support of acquaintances to evade capture. Law enforcement considers that he may have fled the immediate area, potentially crossing state lines. The search includes monitoring known locations of past associates and family members. If you have any information about Amir Johnson's whereabouts, would you report to authorities? What precautions should communities take when a fugitive remains at large in residential areas? These questions encourage active viewer participation and stress the importance of community vigilance. Shakeia Allen's case exposes the critical gaps in domestic violence prevention systems. It underscores how legal protections can fail without adequate enforcement and victim support. This incident should serve as a catalyst for reviewing and strengthening policies that govern restraining orders and law enforcement response. While the circumstances of her death are central to this story, Shakeia Allen's identity extended beyond victimhood. Recognizing her as a person with life, goals, and relationships is essential for understanding the stakes of domestic violence prevention. Several reforms could address systemic failures highlighted by this case, including mandating virtual court appearances for protective order hearings to reduce barriers, increasing funding and training for law enforcement focused on rapid response to restraining order violations, implementing stricter penalties for violations of protective orders, enhancing interagency communication to track offenders more effectively, providing comprehensive victim services that include legal, psychological, and housing assistance. Share this video to raise awareness about the limits of current protections for domestic violence victims. If you see Amir Johnson or have information on his location, immediately contact Baltimore County Police. Support or volunteer for organizations working to prevent domestic violence in your community. If you or someone you know is in a dangerous relationship, seek help and utilize available protective measures early. If you found this story as gripping and heartbreaking as we did, don't forget to like this video and share it with others. And if you want to hear more true crime stories that uncover the mysteries behind these tragic events, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest stories, updates, and discussions. Thank you for joining us on this journey to seek justice and explore the truth. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, stay safe and stay aware.